Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Hello, Sleepy Hollow and television fans. Welcome to another review of Sleepy Hollow. A couple weeks ago, I reviewed the pilot, season 1, episode 1, and then I reviewed the film Scream afterwards to get a movie review in for last month. So now I'm going to finally continue talking about Sleepy Hollow, and we're going to continue with the second episode of Sleepy Hollow, which is titled Blood Moon. That's a very great title. Step up from pilot, I'll say that. This episode is obviously a lot different now that we're one episode in. So let's get into what I think about this episode. There's some characters get more screen time than others, and some characters take a back seat. We even get a new antagonist in this one. Because, let's face it, if the Horseman was the antagonist of every single episode, it kind of gets boring and repetitive. No, we obviously want a new antagonist. And we do get one, and I'm going to talk about that antagonist in a little while. But let's dive right in and discuss my thoughts on Season 1, Episode 2, Blood Moon. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, the plot of Episode 2 is this. So, after Episode 1's events, Brooks getting killed by the devil, and the cops that saw them apparently are now denying that they saw it. Abby Mills' supervisor, Frank, is still reluctant with letting Abby and Crane continue working with each other, but he still lets them do it. He allows Crane to stay with Abby because of the unusual events that now have been occurring with Sleepy Hollow. So Crane gets a vision with Katrina, about who is his kind of spiritual guide, telling him about who the new antagonist is going to be, which is by telling him it's going to be a witch. And Abby is still reluctant in this episode because she doesn't want to believe it, because she doesn't want to get into it. But when there's crazy shit like this happening, it's kind of really hard to deny it after you've seen it a few times. But Brooks is reanimated after failing for the devil in the first episode, and he helps the witch Sabrina, I think. Serlina of Abaddon, to kill the descendants of the people that she was burned for witchcraft, and have flesh to appear on so she can continue killing during the Blood Moon. Hence why this episode is titled Blood Moon. And Crane and Abbie have to obviously stop them. So, since Crane and Abbie are kind of a duo, although I want to talk about them individually, it's really hard to, but I'll try my best. So, Crane is still adjusting to life as before. He's not as mysterious. He's still a little mysterious, but we learn a little bit more about him. He makes discussions, and I actually think him and Abby's chemistry in this episode is actually more entertaining than the first episode's chemistry. And I think that makes sense, considering that in the first episode, we were kind of getting introduced to these characters and getting into the flow of them, and we weren't really familiar with them yet. But this second episode gives them more of a time to shine, and I think there was some good moments, mostly with Crane and Abbie together in this episode, and their partnership definitely helps. Crane is really both him and Abbie are great in this episode. Crane sympathizes with Abbie and obviously realizes that of all the crazy shit, that it's really, it's so much to take in. But he knows that you can't really keep denying it, because it's just not going to help. And if you run away from, your fears, and don't face them eventually, or it's not, then you'll never be able to stand up for yourself. He obviously doesn't want to deal with the crazy shit with Abbie either. He would rather have a normal life too, but he obviously can't do that because they are witnesses, as they were revealed in the first episode. But their partnership is very great. Crane and Abbie both have some fantastic moments together. There's a few scenes, and I think their scenes are the most memorable to me, so I'll mention a few of them. One scene that I guess the first scene I could mention is Abbie explaining to Crane how much Corbin changed her life when they first met, and how it was, and how she did a lot of bad things that she regretted after that incident in the woods with her sister, with the devil, and her explaining it is a really touching scene, because it gives us more of her backstory, but it tells us more about her as a character, and I really like that about her.
After Jenny and I saw that thing, it got pretty bad for a while. She was sent to the institution, and I did a lot of stupid things to try and shut it all out. Drugs. Me and this guy I was seeing broke into a pharmacy. Cop car pulls up, guy bolts, just gone. And this sheriff steps out the cruiser. I was thinking, that's it. I'm going to jail. My life is over. But instead of taking me to jail, he takes me to a diner. He orders apple pie and says,
"You know what I love about apple pie a la mode? When the warm, crunchy crust comes together with the smooth frozen ice cream. And in about 5 minutes, all the ice cream melts and becomes a warm, soupy mess. When that happens, we're leaving. So you got 5 minutes to decide if you're going to change your life or if I'll take you to jail."
So I changed. Right there. I got more fathering in those 5 minutes than I got my whole life.
So that's one scene. Another scene that I personally also like is when Crane is discussing his past as well. His experience with the witch Serlina, when he talks about how during the war, these attacks or murders were happening to his soldiers, and I also like that because it shows, it gives Crane, I like Crane's personal experience brought into it because it shows that he knows the monsters pretty well, and it makes for such a great scene, and it really helps flesh him out, his backstory, which I really do like.
Wait, what do you mean you know who did this?
What I'm about to tell you, I myself would once have dismissed as superstitious folly, but that was before the war began. One night, my regiment was returning to camp near Albany. The moon hung low in its cycle, as it does now, a blood moon, as Katrina described. The destruction was far too extensive for common artillery. There were bodies everywhere. Our men reduced to ash, which gave way to a darker revelation as I sensed a presence in the woods around us. I could not have told you back then what it was I saw that night, but it chilled my blood like nothing before. These strange murders became more frequent. Soon, tales spread of a dark coven led by a high priestess known as Cyrilda of Abaddon. General Washington came to believe the Redcoats had formed a dark alliance with this sorceress.
Corbin believed that there were two groups of witches in Sleepy Hollow. One good, one evil.
And our answers must be in the files he kept hidden in his office. We must find out how much the good sheriff actually knew.
And I guess for one final scene with Crane and Abbie, I would pretty much say that they have a good funny moment as well when Crane's kind of talking with her about her ex-boyfriend, who is a part of the police department, and it's really entertaining and funny how he, how his little banter with Abbie about her ex-boyfriend. I find that it's a nice, funny, and cute scene. It makes the episode very entertaining.
Facial expressions have changed little, if at all, over the centuries. Were you and Luke formerly betrothed?
He's my ex. We weren't betrothed. There was no betrothing, and we've got bigger problems. The files were moved to the archives. I need clearance to get in, and Irving isn't answering his phone.
Where's the building?
Across the street, one with the guard out front.
The armory? I know another way in. To the basement. Your affair did not end well, I take it.
What's in the basement?
I'll show you. What was the impetus of your disbandment?
We broke up when I was leaving for the FBI.
But you didn't leave.
Nope.
Then, theoretically, you could rekindle the relationship.
I will literally pay you to stop talking.
I would happily accept, as I'm in need of currency. But since you did not hesitate to interrogate me about Katrina, I think I'm entitled to my query.
I believe I'm entitled to tell you it's my private business.
Well, Sleepy Hollow is full of secrets. And now I'm going to show you another.
But yes, overall, Crane and Abbie's characters are very good. Crane talks about his personal experiences. He supports Abbie on this adventure, and he's happy about, sharing it with her, and that he's not alone in this. Abbie still is trying to overcome her fears of the supernatural or things that can't be explained. Because she doesn't want to feel like she's crazy, and she just doesn't want to be on. She just wants to have a normal life, but she knows that it's tough to do that now because she's a witness, and there's going to be more evil going through Sleepy Hollow, and this is her job. She just has to do it. But she knows that Crane will be there to help her, as well as Corbin being a spiritual guide for her, telling being straightforward and telling her the truth, but also telling her giving her a little hint to not fear her, sister. And her sister does make an appearance, the ending scene. Jenny does appear in it, and she appears all tough and the rough and tough type of sister. But I really can. I'm really excited to see what her character will be like, because I'm sure she'll make an appearance in the next episode, since they kind of build that up at the ending scene. But yeah, Jenny's appearance was very good. Irving's character was very limited, and he wasn't really in it as much. He was just there in the beginning, to just tell her that she can work with Crane, even though with all this supernatural stuff, because of this weird stuff that's going on. Even though, like Abbie, he's just very reluctant as well, but he hasn't seen the things Abbie has, so it's a lot different. So let's talk about our villains. Well, for starters, there's Brooks. Brooks is, of course, the supporting antagonist. He is helping the antagonists get their goal because, well, he's a servant of the devil, I would say. And he failed the first time with the Horsemen, so it was nice of him to make a reappearance. He's a very weird cop, and he uses the cover as a cop when he comes back to life to, to use it as a cover. He doesn't really have much to do in this episode other than help the antagonists with their goal. I mean, it's nice to see him again, but I don't really find his character as interesting in this one as maybe as the first one. I guess because he just had more interactions in the first episode and we were with him a lot more. This episode, he doesn't really have many moments, so his character is just, he's just kind of a servant at this point, and he's not really as fleshed out as he was in the first episode, or does much in this one. But of course, the antagonist is the witch Serlina. Serlina is is not a bad antagonist, actually. Her backstory is explained throughout, I think, the middle of the episode, and it's just explained about her past and how she was captured, how she was burned down, and how she told them that the people that burned her for witchcraft, that she would come back and kill their ancestors. To come back alive, and she almost succeeded if it weren't for Crane and Abbie. But personally, she's not as nearly as good of an antagonist as the Headless Horseman is. She's creepy, I'll give her that. She can be very creepy, which the creepiness might be what makes her such a good antagonist. But beyond being creepy, which I get that's the whole point of the villain, but I don't know, it's just, I didn't find it exciting to see her on screen. I didn't find her to be a fun protagonist to watch. It wasn't like the Horseman, where you were really excited to see him and see what his next move was, and what was going to happen between when him and everyone else, were him and the Crane and Abbie got together. Serlina does see Crane and Abbie at the end, and she talks about Katrina, which means she knows about Crane's wife and she probably knows him, and tells her that, and gives Crane the tip off that Katrina is a prisoner in another world. And Crane is, which sets up, Crane he's eventually going to try and free her, since she's a prisoner in a world. But it's really besides being a creepy antagonist, I didn't. And her appearance was okay. I don't know. I just didn't find her a fantastic antagonist. I don't know. Maybe it's just because her goal was just not really kind of simple-minded. She was just a witch that killed like one person and then, used their ashes to create flesh while under a blood moon. I mean, she just didn't have as big of a goal as it just wasn't as big a high as her plan or goal just wasn't as investing as her. She was creepy, like I said, which made her a very fun and an interesting antagonist, but her goal just was lacking, and that just kind of made me feel like it was just too simple. It wasn't fun or interesting, her goal. Maybe if it just was something different, because I like the idea of her going after certain people, but she only went after one person in the episode, which is disappointing. I would have liked to seen her maybe going after multiple people, because maybe that would have made it more interesting. But yeah, she just wasn't an interesting enough antagonist for me to really find her engaging. But Crane and Abbie, like I said, were in tip-top shape. They had great moments together in this episode. They provided great support for each other. They're honestly so amazing, and it was just really fun to see them talk about have all these great moments together. There were so many Crane and Abbie moments, but I just picked 3 of them because I felt like those were the most, I guess, intriguing of them. So let me see. I mean, other than that, I can't really say much about this episode. It's just a simple episode. It's not as grand scale, I would say, as the first episode. And I think the only difference is that Crane and Abbie's partnership or relationship is a lot more fleshed out. Their characters individually are fleshed out, and their relationship together is more better than I think in the first episode. Besides that, not much is going on in this episode. It's kind of a small scale episode to me, at least just in my opinion. I just don't think that it was as big of a scale as it was in the first episode. But each episode's different, and I'm not surprised. But I can't wait to see Jenny in the next episode when she appears. But yeah, I don't think there's really much more I can say about in this episode. Other than that, I guess I should just give my final thoughts, because I'm not gonna drag this review out any longer. So let's see. Well, I will give season 1, episode 2 of Sleepy Hollow my gut is gonna give it a 3 out of 5. I was leaning towards 4, but when I really thought about it, I decided to just give it a 3 because I don't know. I mean, personally, there's 2 things that bring it down for me. Unlike the first episode, which I think where it was just a lot more entertaining, I think. This one is just not as... It's just an okay episode. It's just an average episode. It's not bad, but it's not really good. Like, I'm not going to rewatch this episode anytime soon. It's just not... I would say the reason I gave it a 3 out of 5 is because, one, the villain's plan is just too small scale and lackluster. And also, none of the characters besides Crane, Abbie, and the villain, Serlina, really get much fleshing out or do much, which kind of makes it, I don't know, just lackluster for me. There's just not much going on in this episode. I'm not saying I want it to be world-ending plot. I just want it to be a good enough plot where, you know, maybe a good enough goal or plan for this for our antagonist. And I just felt her plan was lackluster, and I know that, and unlike the last episode, the characters were all got so many moments that I didn't feel that it was an issue. But in this one, not only does Captain Irving not really, you know, kind of take a back seat in this episode, and I know he's just a background character, but he had a lot more moments in the first episode than he did in this one. And also, John Cho's character of Lieutenant Brooks, he just doesn't do much as he did in the first episode. I don't feel like he doesn't feel like a secondary antagonist. He feels more like a servant for the witch, which I would have liked it if we had two villains who both did crazy shit. That would have been great. And if the plan was just modified a little bit, maybe the witch does something different. I mean, like I said, her going after all these different people probably would have been an interesting plot thread, and probably would have made the episode maybe better, maybe even a perfect episode. But unfortunately, those things just kind of bring it down for me. And otherwise, the setting of Sleepy Hollow is fine, and music doesn't really bother me. So yeah, that's my rating of this episode. 3 out of 5. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I know I didn't really, it may have seemed like I didn't give much thought about it, but I don't know, it's just a typical episode. It was really not much to explain for this one. I mean, I would have liked to, it's just not like the first episode where there was a lot more going on. This episode had very little for me, and it just didn't work. Not, at least not in this episode. Maybe in other episodes, small plots might work, but this one, it just wasn't a good enough plan for me to find it more interesting. But I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I do still think I would definitely say if you did watch episode 1 and you want more Sleepy Hollow, and if you like Abbie and Crane, want more Abbie and Crane moments, this episode delivers on that. And the villain is interesting enough, but not too interesting, where she could have been she was fleshed out well, and she was creepy, but her plan and motives just weren't good enough for me. I just didn't find them as intriguing. But not every villain will be like that, and I personally think that you guys should watch this episode. It's not an episode that I don't think you should rewatch on its own, but it is an episode that I think you that you might enjoy for certain things than others. But it depends on your opinion. But please do leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it. Comment down below your thoughts about this episode. Do you like episode 2? Do you think it's a lot more better than I'm making it out to be, or do you think it's, you know, worse, or do you think my rating was fair of it? You know, what do you think of this episode in general, and in the Sleepy Hollow so far? And subscribe for more reviews like this with Sleepy Hollow. And do vote in my poll at the end of my video for which television show you want me to continue after episode 3, my episode 3 review of Sleepy Hollow. Do you want me to do Impractical Jokers, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You, or do you want me to continue more Sleepy Hollow episodes after episode 3? I'll have a poll for you at the end of the video, so you can check that out. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, peace out.